Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at two books by the artist Will Tempest. Will is somebody that I just came across on Instagram. I really enjoy his work. I think there's a lot of really beautiful designs in his work and a real awesome use of line throughout what he does. He reminds me a lot of some other artists in the more mainstream that I quite like as well. But the first one here is a collection of short stories called Short Sword. I'm just going to show like one page from each so you get a sense of Will's artwork. This one's called Cruel Pollinator. Actually, I'm going to show you a couple pages from some of these. So Will has this really controlled, beautiful, delicate, clean line that he works primarily with. And then it has like these dry brush techniques. It looks like maybe he's using markers, different types of gray markers that are maybe even a little bit faded to get all of these beautiful dry brush things that he does. Really interesting page compositions as well, where everything kind of flows like from the gunk from this panel flows into this panel and creates like a total page composition. I really enjoy that. You can see that here. This is another page from Cruel Pollinator. There's a lot of like images interacting. Without color, some of them can get like you have to stop and really pay attention because there's not as much, there's not a lot of use of black. There's some of these grays, but sometimes with just the line work, you're saying, oh, I wish there was color to like separate these figures out a little bit more. And there's not a lot of line weight change. There's a pretty consistent like range of a little bit thicker and a little bit thinner, which is really nice and elegant, but I think it's definitely the type of work that could benefit from color. It's used really well to create like these drippy, pussy, goopy type of textures. Reminds me a lot of like James Herron or Lorenzo, I think it's Di Felici, the guy that's been working with Kirkman on the Energon universe stuff. It reminds me of a lot of artists like in that kind of vein. Ryan Otley, a lot of those guys that are with the Felix comic art that are represented with that. A lot of the same type of textures and stuff, but done really well here. And then you can see this really cool design on this character that's got like this bug-like structure with all these arms coming out and then this like kind of weird rib way that they plug into his chest. This cool mask. Just a lot of really fun designs. I do worry that even like this may be harder to see on screen though, just because some of it, you know, without the color, like this runs into this a little bit. But really beautiful stuff when you can stop and study it. There's two stories that are really short. This one was called Ritual. There's only a couple pages. Really like again, the dry brush effect that's going on in here. I think that adds that extra contrast that Will needs in his art if it's in black and white to be seen. And it reminds me of a whole other lineage of artists, you know, going back to like the EC stuff like Wrightson and you know, all the EC guys. And what was that? I don't know. There's another one that Wrightson was involved in, Web of Horror, I think. So a lot of those type of artists come to mind. And it's a really interesting combination to see that between like this really new vibe versus this older vibe that's not present a lot in the book, but it is in places. This is from Baited Waters. You get a sense here again of the really cool design work that Will Tempest will do. So having this almost like samurai influenced costume here with all of these cool details behind. You can see some of the character work over here. Again, that like dry brush marker look to create some of the artwork in the background. Just really cool, playful stuff. Again, a lot of this cool drippy texture that he's so good at. A lot of these like weird bulbous things. This has these snails crawling all over. They've broken into like this vault and there's snails crawling all over like the abandoned gold and stuff, just kind of showing how irrelevant that is. So yeah, perfect kind of bugs and all that kind of stuff is perfect for him. Porta Alchemica is this story. I tagged this page because again, it has some of this like heavy black and like abstract dry brush work, which I think Will is also really good at. He just doesn't use it very often. And it's cool to see someone have that variety and someone playing with that variety. And that's something I hope he continues to play with, because the mix between the two is really, really nice, especially in black and white. Larval State is this piece here is the book I think I first found. I saw Will posting images from this book, and I think I even bought a PDF of it at the time. That's all he was selling, just because I like the line work so much. I thought it was really beautiful. And again, you can see all of the the use of exoskeletons and bugs and nature textures are so well done throughout this. And then you get to see here like an actual bug creature, and you can see that influence. Like Ben Steinbeck just had a series that I've seen some images from, kind of designs like this. This looks like that first book that DeFelici did with Kirkman. I forget what that's called. I have the first volume of that. So just like some type of designs that I've seen in the air right now. Will Tempest is definitely in that lane and doing a really damn good job of it. Again, I think someone coloring this really well could make it pop even more. There's also a bit of like the Jeff Darrow thing, with the minor variation in line weight. Also, like here you can see no like hesitation to go in and do super detailed like technological backgrounds and stuff. I think Will is very much an alien and an environment designer. Like those things seem to interest him more than the figures, the human figures. But the human figures are perfectly well drawn to fit in as well. This is some more of that textural stuff that seems very familiar to me, but it's something that's always appealing to me. There's some cool sci-fi ideas in here as well. Here we're talking about these bug creatures, and this bug creature is telling the guy that he's has an amazing a friend who's an amazing pheromone artist. I think that's a really interesting idea, that as a different sense becomes important for a different type of creature, they would express themselves differently, and people would make pheromone music or pheromone art or whatever. So I think there's some really interesting sci-fi writing ideas as well in all of these to complement the art. And then here in the back, there's a sketchbook planning out some of the characters. And I think because they're not couched in the pages, you can see the designs a little bit more clearly. Like this awful barren looking guy here that's actually like on the head of a snail, kind of like in the early Berserk story. There's a kind of a guy like that, but very, very different vibes to it all. And then there's a couple pages in here that just seem like throwaway pages, where Will is playing more with the dry brush and texture and wash stuff again. So maybe a hint of what's to come. I'm not sure. I'm not sure in what order these things were done. My sense is that the art in this book has to have been done more recently, like the line work and particularly some of the earlier stories where the compositions are a little bit wilder. They're not everything stuck in a panel. That seems like an evolved state of his work, like getting more sophisticated with composition and design, but I'm not sure when these were all done. One of the reasons I mention that is because in Harsh Prospect, we get this really nicely produced hardcover book here. It's even got like a little bookmark on it. Beautiful. Like if you take the dust jacket off, it's still got a beautiful design on it, which is great for me since I'm not a dust jacket guy. Really well printed, really nice production all the way throughout. But in this book, you see Will sticking more to a grid. And I know in this one I was saying like, oh, I really want to see his work colored. But you could, it seems to me that like that aspect of his work is still developing. The colors in here tend to be like more muted, grayed and browns. You can see throughout. It seems like an attempt to be a little bit more naturalistic. Obviously, there's like changes from cooler to warmer throughout the book, but like kind of these subtle gradients and things on it, which does help piece the pictures up and make more sense of it. But also, I feel at the same time like the line quality that he has, like whenever I see Moebius colored like this, I think Moebius looks like a bad artist. When I see Moebius colored like the way the Inkall was colored originally with those over-the-top colors, it really works and accentuates the line work. I feel like these darker, grayer, muted colors can really diminish the beautiful quality of line work. So that's something I think it looks like Will is still playing with in his work. And again, I don't know if this came first or second in, like, in the order of how he made these things, but this one feels to me like less experimental with the page layouts, and then like the color is still something that's being sorted out. This is a interesting sci-fi story, again, of like a attempt to colonize, I think, on Mars. There's a strange object that's found, like this kind of goopy life form, it looks like. There's some interesting like diegetic documents, which I always like, documents that are part of the story in the comic, so that helps tell the narrative here of this colony. This page is a good example of where the colors get a little bit lighter, even though they're super desaturated. It starts to move more to like how Brandon Graham deals with his colors. Again, where it needs to have that lighter, flatter colors with just minimal gradients, so that the line work is what sings, because the line work is what's so exceptional in this book. So really like this, and just composition and like basic, line quality on these images is really beautiful. There's some really cool technology in here as well, where you have like these big digging machines. They're doing a lot of, obviously they're colonizing Mars, so there's a lot of digging going on underground, like trying to set up agriculture and all of this. That's like behind the story in this one. So some really cool machines. Eventually, this lead character here meets, the entity that little goob came from in the beginning. I don't want to spoil it, but this is less than halfway through the book, so I feel like it's just explaining part of the plot. There's an attempt between like these creatures, these life forms, and the humans that are colonizing Mars. These creatures are coming in saying, like you're a colony, thousands of individuals working towards a common goal, survival. With this in mind, I think we may be able to help each other. So this entity is like coming to these invaders basically and saying like, let's work together, like we can survive. So there's this exploration of that as a theme, like why we have tribalism versus like how we could just, what we could accomplish if we get along. Obviously that's going to fall apart in the book, like, or else there wouldn't be any tension, so I don't think that's much of a spoiler. And so you get some really interesting images as well, where like the mech tech is combined with the big goopy stuff, and you just get some really cool images. But again, I feel like this red got so dark that it diminishes the success of some of the line work. So images like this that are just amazing in the line, I think the lighter colors, but like, up and to the left, like Brandon told us about his coloring, would be helpful on some of these things, or just brighter in general. But I'm still really, really excited about Will's work. He's obviously like just plowing away and making a ton of awesome stuff, that he's got both of these books out in a pretty short period of time. And developing as an artist, like I said, I'm not sure which way he's developing, but my guess is that some of these are maybe more recent. But it could be that he felt like his storytelling wasn't as clear in this format without the panels, and because by the later chunk of the book, we're definitely getting more and more like things contained in panels. So I'm not sure. I think, just selfishly, I would really love to see like some of this more experimental page layout with really good colors on top of it, separating things out. And then I think that would have a really powerful artist, like leveraging everything that he does really well to the fullest extent. So really cool stuff. I would definitely recommend both of these, and definitely give Will a follow, because I'm sure that whatever comes next is going to be even cooler and more impressive.